We all have our demons.
Not enough pain.
What's up, YouTube? It's Kilrian, back with another video. Today, we're talking about Battle for Azeroth. Yes, we are. Why am I looking at Archimonde? Because I'm still here in Hellfire Citadel, which has been a trend in my most recent videos. But it is slightly relevant, I promise. So, let's get to it then, shall we? I want to talk about Battle for Azeroth release date because we got some tantalizing new information this week via the good folks at Wowhead, who snoop around on the CDN servers for World of Warcraft, PTR, and other content. CDN being Content Distribution Network. So, when you're snooping around there, you can find various info. It'll normally be where you get your patches from, so it usually tells you what your production server version is. What we found is that there was an alpha version of Battle for Azeroth put up there and then quickly reverted from the public directory of that server yet again this week. Now, that tells us a couple of things. First of all, it tells us that we pay entirely too much goddamn attention to what's going on obscure servers and other such databases for this game. And I think that's fair to say. But it's also worth calling out that this is the first public movement we've seen in a while related to Battle for Azeroth. We had our moments after BlizzCon. Something similar with the CDN actually happened pre-BlizzCon as well, which became some interesting rumor mill stuff for a while. But this is the first time post-BlizzCon where that change has been made yet again. And I think that it's important to actually note that this matters, because with the change on the CDN, it means that we're likely to see an alpha test pretty soon. Now, how soon? We're going to get into speculation territory here, because that's what I love. So here we go. I think that we're going to see an actual closed alpha that's publicly available in mid-January. I don't think that Blizzard is going to let that slip out of the studio until 7.3.5 is actually on live servers. Now, the reason I think that is because they are testing a lot of stuff that matters for Battle for Azeroth in 7.3.5. We're testing particularly the leveling flow improvements with zone scaling tech applied to all pre-Warlords content. You still have to do Warlords from 90 to 100. I know. But with that testing out of the way, say on January 16th, I think, seems like a good date, which is still my speculated date for the 7.3.5 patch itself. It's also my speculated date for Battle for Azeroth pre-orders to go live, and speculating alongside that we'll have a pre-order bonus available immediately of being able to unlock and play 4 out of 6 allied races, Lightforged Draenei and Void Elves for the Alliance, and the Nightborn and High Mountain Tauren for the Horde. So I do think that's pretty straightforward. That's an easy expectation to have. However, once that's out, from what we see so far, 7.3.5 appears to be the last patch of Legion. The story content we get in Silithus that deals with the wound is very specifically titled the Legion Epilogue. I've talked about that a little bit in multiple forums about why that's disappointing a little bit, but here's where I think Blizzard redeems themselves. If this comes out in January, we have the speculated 16th date, which is Last Wing of LFR Frantoris. Everybody loses Argus in the sky. Everybody gains a big giant sword in Silithus. Make your own "that's what she said" jokes. And then we get a patch. And we get a patch that opens up some of that content that's going to be essential to bringing in new players around expansion time. offering them the opportunity to boost, but also offering an improved level of flow, and the allied race characters that need you to do some content at endgame. So then Battle for Azeroth testing would make perfect sense to go right after 7.3.5 hits live servers. Maybe even a smidge before. It's been Blizzard's practice for most of Legion, and I believe actually pretty much all of Legion at this point, that even once a patch goes live, PTR usually doesn't come down anymore. Like, there's almost always something on PTR throughout Legion. Even as patch cycling has gotten a little bit slower and a little less pronounced, that's still been the case. The 7.3 PTR actually remained open for a while after 7.3 was on live servers. Now, there wasn't really any reason for that. Like, they didn't do a whole lot otherwise, but there was still like raid testing going on a little bit. And then ultimately it just got paved over with 7.3.2, and then raid testing resumed. But it's been pretty common for Blizzard basically to stop the old cycle of needing to like sort of shut down PTR, spin PTR back up, and then immediately get people on a new patch. Now they're just keeping PTR up all the time. And not only that, but PTR content gets cycled pretty quickly. Something hits live, they might give us about a week of us actually playing live content, and then they'll open the gates. But an alpha test for a new expansion is going to be different. What I expect is that within a week of 7.3.5 going live, so let's bust out our handy in-game calendar. There's the 16th. Call of the Scarab ends, actually, quite conveniently, the next reset on Tuesday the 23rd of January 2018. So, it would be pretty conceivable to imagine that Blizzard could then just push out alpha on January 23rd. Other than the Legion epilogue content and the new battleground and that stuff, it's pretty clear after this that all the foot's on the pedal for gas to push us right to Battle for Azeroth. And it's in Blizzard's best interest if the Legion finale is literally the quest that we have on 7.3.5. Even with cool voiceover, even with cool cinematics. Honestly, if that's the ending of Legion, then we need a patch 8.0 and Battle for Azeroth soon. And I mean fucking soon. Like, we need that story content desperately to get us over the river, through the woods, to Battle for Azeroth. We go. So, now I guess the question then is, will this be an open or closed alpha? I think it's going to be closed. Blizzard traditionally doesn't open alphas up too wide, but closed meaning that it'll still be publicly accessible. If you've opted in for beta, you might be able to get in on alpha. I was invited to the alpha phase for Legion. And this is pre-streaming, so I'm not bragging or anything. I don't have any contacts or connects, but if you're from Blizzard and you're watching this, you know, I would be okay with that. But I do think that it's going to be a part of the hype cycle, right? Once everyone has played the end of Legion, effectively, that 7.3.5 content alongside the last wing of LFR for Antorus, then inevitably, the best way to keep people interested is going to be to open up the floodgates of new content, have streamers, have YouTubers, have those people actively playing Battle for Azeroth in that alpha state. Actually getting to see stuff like, what does Heart of Azeroth do? How does the Azerite system work? Is it very similar in leveling to where it almost doesn't matter like the artifact weapon did, and then suddenly at 120 it matters a whole fucking hell of a lot? Will it be different? There's questions about warfronts, questions about zone scaling, questions about the story. How does Jaina come back? How does Teldrassil burn down? What the fuck happens to Lordaeron? How do we get there? So there's so much that we need to understand, and it's a part of Blizzard's hype cycle at this point in terms of the marketing, in terms of the way content's delivered into the game, to use players' hype as a marketing tool because it's cheap and it's effective. It doesn't cost them anything, really, to push out a patch. I mean, it doesn't cost them anything additional, I should say. It's pretty costly to manage a server and all that. I get it. But, and more so now that net neutrality is slowly dying. But, not the video for that. So I think that what we'll see is we're going to see Blizzard having a closed alpha with invites only. But it's going to be fairly well open to streamers, to YouTubers, to podcasters, to anyone who will talk about the experiences they're having with the game when it's in that state. Because it's important marketing for Blizzard, especially with the lukewarm reception that some people have had for Battle for Azeroth. There are still people who are not sold on the concept. I mean, I think I enjoy the concept, but I also spend a ridiculous amount of time telling you, myself, and anyone who will listen, Dennis really doesn't like it, by the way, talking about how Old Gods are actually going to be the real story of Battle for Azeroth. And I still think that, but I'm not sure if I'm just telling myself that because I honestly believe that there's clues and I'm being clever, or if I just really don't like the Horde versus Alliance conflict as a story element. And I think that probably there's a little bit of both in there. So, with the alpha then, it's going to become pretty apparent pretty quickly what the overall story beats are going to be. I don't think Blizzard is going to put a lot of effort into really pushing us to not be able to know. What we'll effectively get is what we get currently with Legion patches. We're going to know what Blizzard wants us to know, and that's going to be pretty easily apparent. It's going to be zone changes, it'll be the actual new content, it'll be whatever they want to showcase and show off. And then anything that they don't want to reveal right away is going to remain encrypted in the game files, just waiting for the time to be right. They figured out how to get encrypted data that the data miners can't crack. That's why the other thing I want to talk about with the CDN is that it seems like they're getting ready for a limited, probably NDA-bound alpha test or beta test of some sort pretty quickly, and that may even happen sooner. The reason I think that's the case is that the data on the CDN this time wasn't just a patch table that was publicly available that said 8.0, but apparently there was encrypted content to go with it. So it wasn't just strictly, okay, Battle for Azeroth is going to come out soon, here's an 8.0 alpha client, version number. It was actual data alongside that. So I think that it's likely that by early January, probably just after the holidays, after everyone gets back, we're probably going to have people playing Battle for Azeroth, but unable to talk about it publicly, unable to share any of that experience with us. I think this is important to Blizzard because you can, if you have your influencers and your content creators on board early, they can identify some of the stuff that Blizzard's developers may have missed. That's also probably better for bug testing. In some ways, that they are able to kind of play it like really closely and look at it and see how it runs on someone else's computers with whatever driver quirks, software quirks, hardware quirks that may entail. Like that's got to be valuable for Blizzard, especially since it appears with some of the stuff we saw at like the art panels, for one example, that yet again we're getting some under the hood tweaking of the engine. At least I really have to hope that, because the Alliance cloak they showed at the art panel looked fucking incredible. If you haven't seen it, you should seek out that panel. It's amazing. It's like big and wavy and, oh, yes. Asymmetrical, which apparently until fairly recently was actually hard for Blizzard to do. If you've ever listened to some of the art tech panels and discussions they've had on that topic, it's actually kind of fascinating. Like, for character creation to have like asymmetrical scar options, they have to build like totally different textures that are uniquely tailored to allow that. And because they have to build the textures in that way, you can't always do it with, like, so you can have just a scar option, because there's sort of a visual, like, continuity they want to maintain so that everything looks good and plays pretty well. So it's interesting, like, but I do think we're going to see some more tweaks there, and I hope that the cloak is one of them. But I'm getting off topic again. So, with Battle for Azeroth entering a closed alpha where people will likely be able to stream and share content in mid-January, then I think it's worth looking at what that means for alpha into beta, into release. What we know about Legion is that Legion's process lasted a pretty damn long time. In late December, we had some confirmation that an alpha beta would start in January. In January, it started, and that was January 2016, to be clear, not like this January. And when that started, it took about 8 months in total. There was an alpha phase that lasted about 4 months, and then in April, it started to clear the way for people to be invited into a beta phase, and that's when they really opened up invites to a lot more just regular players. That's when some of my friends actually started getting in. And yes, that did sound a little elitist, and no, I don't care. But, yeah, so I expect that we might see something similar, but it's going to be more of a condensed time scale. I think what's nice about the way that they're doing this whole structure is that, first of all, they're not having to test scaling as much. Like, generally, we know how level scaling works at this point. The answer is pretty well. And it seems like for story's sake, they're giving us content with more continuity. So it seems like there is more of an intent to design this stuff such that we are able to go through it in a fixed order that tells the story the best way possible in Blizzard's eyes, which are right now the only eyes that have actually seen the real story. So I think it's worth looking at the whole thing, but I don't think we're going to see as much beta testing as we did for Legion. Because Legion also had to really, really push hard to balance the artifact weapons and the scaling of traits and points and all of the stuff that went into that. Now, they'll have to do something similar, presumably, for the Heart of Azeroth, but I don't think it's going to be as intense. The Heart of Azeroth system does seem like it has potential to add a lot of complexity and to change things up a whole hell of a lot, but to be frank, I don't think it's going to be something that's going to require a lot of really interesting, detail-oriented testing. I think that Blizzard generally now knows how that stuff works. They have sort of the ultimate test of that from artifacts, so now they have skill at those post-game progression systems, and so it seems to me like it makes a lot of sense to expect that Blizzard is going to be able to deliver the goods here much faster. How much faster remains to be seen. My thought is that we're going to be in an alpha and beta phase for about 6 months total, and then I think we're going to see release in late June. I certainly hope so. So actually probably about 5 months then, to be about January 23rd to, I think, June 28th is the date I pegged when I wrote about it. So I think that's what we're going to see. I'm excited if that's the case, because what that means is by end of January, not only are we going to see what happens to our artifact weapons, but we're also going to have juicy, tantalizing leaks. I live for the days when MMO Champ and Wowhead post those giant, juicy data mine troves full of stuff. Do you want 15 zone maps? Here's 15 zone maps. Do you want to look at 100 models? Here you go. Do you want to see Jaina in all her new animated glory? Here you go. Would you like to look at thousands of updated icons? Probably not, but thanks for offering. I appreciate it. So that's all I wanted to talk about here today. Battle for Azeroth is barreling down on us, and I do expect it's going to be here sooner than later, and I expect that there will be old gods here, and you can fight me about it later. But that's it for the video. Thanks so much for watching. I am streaming on Twitch. I am tweeting on Twitter. and I am writing on WordPress, and links to all three down in the description box. Thanks so much for watching yet again, and I'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.